Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, hey, welcome into the program. We hope that you're doing well and you are ready for the show today. So today on the program, we of course have the one, the only Popzara, and of course managing editor Nathan Evans. And we're going to be talking about everything under the sun. We have a lot of very, very fun topics to discuss. And looking forward to jumping right into that here in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to, of course, talk about a couple of things here real quick. ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, show notes. We're a couple of days behind, but we'll catch up before the weekend, before we head out. And hey, that is the most relevant place. So even though it's not relevant right to this minute, it is the most relevant place, and we promise we'll get that updated here soon. With that being said, also there, if you go to the, right there to the homepage, you can of course see over on the right. I always want to draw attention to this, and we're still getting prizes together so that as many people can enter to win. But check this out. If in our little intro there, you heard giveaways. This is it. So starting February 1st, that was our 30th anniversary. Our 30th, that was our 30th. And Nathan, I'm sure that it is, and I have to fix that too. But but with that being said, 30th anniversary, we're still working the bugs out, and maybe in the next 30, we'll have everything working the way it's supposed to. And for that, we are of course giving away. I think a couple of the keynote prizes are just straight up Amazon gift cards, which are as good as cash. Let's face it, you can buy almost anything that is legal, and you can find it there. And of course, let's see, we're also giving away a couple book collections from one of our correspondents. He has graciously decided to put up a couple of his books that he has written, and we have some other prizes that we're working to get filled out on Monday. So, but the cool news is that you just enter today, you enter anytime this month. It's running the entirety of February, and don't worry, the prizes will be added as time goes on, and we will draw all the winners. The contest ends February 28th at midnight, or I should say at 11:59 p.m. And then from there, we'll distribute all the prizes and everyone will be happy. And again, it's our way of saying thank you for helping us do 30 years of Computer America. And we're looking forward to another 30 years at least. And by the way, just so you guys know, and I'm really impressed with you guys, and I just want to highlight this, the contest has been up for about 4 days now, and we are heading up on, we're over 65,000 entries. So we want to thank you so much for doing that. And we can't wait to see, all the prizes and all the prizes go out. And hey, follow us on Computer America. There's going to be more. This is not the end of it. So Everyone, with that being said, long-winded speech. Everyone, welcome into the program once again. Let's go ahead, bring on our guest, who is picking apart our website as we do it, because I've left him in the wings and he is looking for something to do, so he's troubleshooting. Everyone, welcome onto the program once again. Nathan Evans, Popzara managing editor, and of course, longtime friend of the show. Nathan, how you been?
Hey, Ben, what's going on? And by the way, you're totally right. I am the type of guest that if you invite into your home and you go out and leave me alone, I will pick through your cupboards and I will look for all the things that I can look for. I'm one of those.
Do you reorganize people's kitchens when they're not looking?
It's an obsession. I literally have. I do have a. I'm not joking. I have testimonials. I actually do have a reputation for cleaning people's houses. It's like a positive mental illness.
Yeah, there you go.
But I got to say something real quick, because I know it's not one of the stories I sent you, but I just have to say it because this is a death show. I just want to say rest in peace, R.I.P. to the actor Christopher Plummer, who passed away.
I saw that.
Did you see this?
Sound of Music and longtime actor.
Everything. You name it. He was probably associated
Knives
with it.
Out, I believe, was his last film that he did.
Crazy. But the reason I bring him up in this context is because Christopher Plummer, of course, very famously became one of probably the first actor to ever be digitally inserted to replace an actor.
Really?
Remember, I think it was All the Money in the World from 2017 when Kevin Spacey was originally had played the role. It was ready to go. The commercials with Kevin Spacey.
There's a name, yeah.
Scandal. And who can we get that's legitimately 80 years old? And they got Christopher Plummer, and he on a soundstage recorded his entire role, and they spliced him into the film, and he was nominated for an Oscar for it. And we're going to see this technology quite a bit more.
Yeah, even to that effect, I think that a lot of movie studios now, especially with older actors, but really any actor, especially after what happened with Christopher Walken, not Christopher. Oh my God, Paul Walker. I believe.
What happened? You got me scared. Like, what happened?
No. Paul Walker of Fast and Furious.
Yes.
And what happened with him? I think that a lot of movie studios know that they're investing tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into production and marketing and things like that. And just real quick, I just gotta say that most studios are taking high-res 3D scans so they can make those digital alterations if anything were to happen.
You want to hear something funny?
What's that?
So you remember in 2016, the Star Wars movie Rogue One?
Yeah.
They had a digitally recreated Peter Cushing for Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yep.
That they actually digitally created him from a mold that was taken when Peter Cushing was in the film Top Secret.
Really?
You know, the Zucker brothers, the Zucker film with Val Kilmer, because Peter Cushing's in there, and they had actually gone back and found this old mold, and that's what they used to scan.
I'm sure it was very high quality. Yeah.
Yeah, probably paper mache. But but I'll tell you this, I'm going to call this now and we can move on, is that watch what Disney's doing with movies like Black Panther, because little by little, they've been actually bait and switching us for years, where half the stuff you see in a Marvel movie is not real. None of the costumes are real. None of the actions are real. It's all CG. And they already came out and said they're not going to replace Chad Boseman in the new Black Panther films. And I actually take that literally, that they're not going to replace him. I think they're going to CG him. I think we're now past the point where an actor is even necessary. You can recreate entire roles from scratch by doing this. And we've seen this before. We've seen younger versions. We've seen digital de-aging. We've seen this, but why not just bypass that? And again, the taste we got was last year with The Mandalorian. Now, I haven't seen 10 seconds of that show, but apparently the internet wept when Mark Hamill returned as Luke Skywalker for 2 seconds.
I remember that.
The CG is bad. It was bad, but people didn't care because it was, I can't talk right now. It was Mark Hamill. Sorry, did I say Mark Wahlberg? That would have been awesome.
No.
Hey, bro. I'm a Jedi, bro.
he definitely returned and he picked up Baby Yoda and that whole thing. And I gotta say that it was very cool to see the CGI. I think was a little bit out of place, but overall, I mean, the technology has come far enough that you're like, oh, that's not quite right. But I mean, back in the day, it would have been, that's so horrible and jarring. Like, not bad means the technology has advanced to the point where it's good. It's really good.
It's a combination of, we want this actor in this role because you saw that when they tried to replace Harrison Ford in the Solo movie. I mean, for as good as the kid did, I forget the game, Aiden Einrich or whatever. It's Harrison Ford, so we're not going to have to replace actors anymore. And I think we're going to see it. And again, I think a lot of it, if you combine the technology of Christopher Plummer's digital insertion, of de-aging, of digitally recreating an actor from like the Paul Walker, I think that's the future.
Well,
and it's basically going to be voice acting.
Is that the future?
I hate it.
Or
I hate it so much.
And really, here's the thing. I mean, this is something that's already been happening, and you're, I would say that you're pretty familiar with, kind of the scene over in kind of Korea and Japan, and kind of the pop culture over there. You are probably the person I know best that has any kind of exposure to it, and I got to say that aren't there like K-pop? I know for a fact there are K-pop bands that are completely digital. There are, kind of streaming stars. There are television stars. Like, there are completely fictitious digital people that are, used in marketing and used in movies and music videos. And like, how much of a future does that have? Because it's one thing to say, okay, huge. We have, Christopher Lloyd, and we have, we can use that again. Or how is it we can, studios can create entire personalities and people and just, cut, I guess, the people out of movie stars.
Check this out. Long answer made very, very short. Do you remember the digital band Gorillaz?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it was a completely fabricated band out of cartoons, right?
Yeah, it was just one musicians. Guy.
Yeah, and we've seen a real life version of that with like bands like Daft Punk or Deadmau5, where they obscure the person beneath because you focus on the imagery, right? Well, here's the sad fact about the whole thing, and we could talk about this all day, but you were talking about this digital idol, Hatsune Miku, which is basically a living anime. Yep, and there's tons of this stuff, but you look at K-pop, you look at boy bands and all this stuff, and they are generated from what's called the idol factory, where they literally, it's like that dun 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 dun. They go in and they like, it's like
all the crazy scale. Machines,
like like that cool Rube Goldberg contraption kind of thing, but they literally spit them out. Like every single K-pop person you see today, man, woman, or whatever, every single one has a limited lifespan. They're like cicadas. Like it takes 18 years to bake, and they're very narrow because because look at them, they all look adorable, sexually non-threatening, and when they age out, they start sprouting some pubic hairs or whatever. They're going to be gone, and they throw them out. And that's the thing. They don't have long for this world because they're not meant to. Again, look it up. It's called the idol system. It originated back in the 70s. Not a lot of long-lasting careers from that thing. So in America, we have a different version because we respect music. But for every NSYNC / Justin Timberlake, you have a billion other boy bands that have all been obscure.
Right.
And so now imagine this, what you talked about music. I mean, how many times have you read about holograms? Holograms dance. We got Tupac.
Michael Jackson came back, and Tupac came back, and
Dude, Michael Jackson has been a hologram for 30 years. Like that nothing else would explain it. But I'll say this. The problem is that we're not producing musicians anymore. Like back in the 50s and 60s, I don't know if you knew this, but things like people like Elvis, they were produced too. They didn't play any music. I mean, they could sing and dance, but like everything was production. Like Phil Spector just died, the music producer, the one who looked like when that giant like white afro he used to have. And so basically they would overproduce musicians. And then we went through this renaissance where musicians like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all the bluesmen, they wanted to play their own music. And we got this reputation that I'm an artist, I do everything. But that's not the state of pop music. The state of pop music is creation, because we're creating a product that can be distributed. So why not just bypass the whole nonsense? Like nobody, like when you see a music video and they're lip syncing and singing, nobody believes they're singing.
Right.
The lips aren't matching. It's like watching a kung fu film.
Right.
And so,
as someone who enjoyed listening to country, about 10 years ago, I had to leave that entire genre behind, personal preference, because of that production that you're talking about. You could just tell that it was like, as soon as I heard about the story, that was like Nashville will pay based on how much imagery you can cram into a song, including boots, beer, blue jeans, white t-shirts, trucks, that kind of thing. As much imagery as you can cram in there, they could determine.
It's just like everything.
Exactly. They could determine how successful something would be. And I'm just saying that kind of approach to music can be applied to anything. And I think that I know that it's only a matter of time before it over encompasses people as well. And I'm sure that studios are already well on their way. Nathan, we're going to switch topics here real quick because, again, we don't need to talk about this all day. But I wanted to...
love what you like. Love what you love.
There you go. Don't listen to us to tell you what to like, but don't like that. Okay,
you're gonna get the K-pop people after you. By the way, be careful.
Sure, and they are a force to be reckoned with, but I don't reckon with that force. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump on over to this next article, Robinhood, and we're not going to go over the entire thing. But Nathan, this whole thing happened since you were last on the show, and I guess the end of this whole thing has kind of come with the Robinhood, the trading app that most of these people were using, has lifted all restrictions on buying and selling GameStop stock. So I thought we'd recap with Nathan Evans. So let's go. Let's talk.
Just to be clear, you guys are we should talk about the missing episode that could have been had we recorded this episode last week, because we were ready to dedicate this entire thing to this debacle.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Which to me was awesome. It was my favorite thing of 2021. And but no, as you could tell, it's withering out. Robinhood. Here's the thing: the world is changing. As we've seen, and as we're going to talk about later with another story, the Congress is not the same Congress it's been. This is a very different legislative world right now. And so, whether it's fair or not, here's the thing, Ben: nobody understands stocks. And nobody understands hedge funds. Nobody understands it, and that's by design, because they don't want you and me investing. They say they do. Hey, come and invest with it. How many times have you turned on an app? Come invest $5. Come invest this micro. They want you to invest the same way Las Vegas wants you to play the machines.
Right.
Oh, just keep putting the money in. Just put your college fund in there. Just take it. No, some people found out a big group led by this. What was the Reddit group? It was the GameStonk people.
Wall Street Bets.
Wall Street Bets found a way to basically count cards with the what was it? Not hedge funds. What was what did they call this?
It was a hedge fund, but they were doing shorts. They were betting that the stock would go down because Nathan, we have talked about GameStop here on the show before. Wow, what a failing business model in the day and age of digital.
I got to say something on the Popzara podcast. We've kind of made the word GameStop verboten. We refer to them as GameSlop, or lame slop because they are predators. Like they're basically a pawn shop
because of their used game policy. I'm assuming.
For starters, sure. No, there's a lot of policies that disadvantage the player. But to be honest with you, they're the only ones left. They're the only viable mainstream game store left. If you want to call them that. But long story short, they're not really the villain here. The villain is Wall Street, because the real villain is that, a lot of people are now privy to the practice of short selling, where basically a entitled elitist group of investors target struggling businesses that they know are going to fail, and they basically practice vampirism on them. And they borrow money knowing that the stock's going to go bankrupt. And because if the stock magically sprouted back to life, they'd owe money. And so what these Redditors did, they basically found a way to basically what do they call it? A call to action, so to speak. They used collectivism. They used all the rules of unionization against the Wall Street hedge people, and they defeated them. They wrecked them.
Some people go ahead.
Well, did you invest?
I did, and I lost money, by the way. So let's just put it that. But I gotta say that the hedge funds, Wall Street, they say that, and this is their point. This is not my point, but their point is that saying that putting shorts on something and borrowing the shares so that they can buy them back at a lower price. They say that is a necessary evil because it trims waste. It is an act of the free market to be able to say that this is a failing business model, this is a failing company, and we are betting that this is going to go poorly. And it's their way of kind of like weeding out the weakness in the market. That's what they're kind of saying.
Sure, they would have said that about Apple back in the late 90s. When
they did. That is why shorts, and by the way, that's why Tesla put out those red satin shorts was because they, everyone, all these hedge funds were betting that Tesla was going to go down. And so they destroyed so many shorts that Elon Musk was like, hey, we're selling shorts now because, they destroyed so many of them. Like the same practice has been used on other companies and successfully for decades and sometimes unsuccessfully, like GameStop and Tesla.
Well, again, though, but again, for the longest time, Wall Street was off hands to people like you and me. It was you had to have an enormous amount of capital to even open the door, and
Sure.
Companies like Robinhood and all this have created these opportunistic ideas that have allowed people like you and me to play with it. Can I give you an example?
Go for it.
I bought a house last year. I've been fixing
Nice.
it up, and I told you we got extra rooms, so we were close to the city, and we decided let's do Airbnb. And so we've spent a lot of money, for what we think is a lot of money fixing it up. And we've had guests stay and it's been really good. That wouldn't have been possible for me 20 years ago. There was no Airbnb. I mean, where would I advertise? A lot of cities like New York and California, they're very restrictive against people renting out their houses.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these pre-existing monopolies. By the way, Wall Street, where is it at? That's right, New York. What else is in New York? They have taxi lobbies. They have taxi monopolies where you can't do taxis unless you have gold medallions. You have these entrenched, cesspoolic, parasitic, aging monopolies that need to go because what they do is they don't want you and me playing in there. They have this game. They're the center of power. And sure, they make a lot of money for a lot of people, but they also lose a lot of money for a lot of people. And frankly, I don't want a bunch of people on Wall Street deciding the future of GameStop. I want GameStop deciding it. And frankly, they've done poorly. They've done very poorly. But the problem is, the problem isn't GameStop. The problem is that when you have systems like Robinhood, by the way, Robinhood's a villain in this too. We'll get to that. But when you have these companies that are promising transparency, they are promising, well, invest in us. And I don't think we need to relitigate all of what Robinhood did, but they behaved poorly through the whole process.
Yeah.
And I don't know if what they did was legal. And I brought up legislation because there have been talks about of looking into what happened. But the question is, and this is my only opinion, this is my only thought, because I don't think this story's over, is that I don't think what the stock traders did was illegal. I think what Robinhood did was illegal, or it's morally and litigiously questionable.
That's
which I think what you're talking about.
That is the next step in the story. You said that the story's not over, and really the story's not over because I think all the madness and all the volatility we saw last week is probably over. But now figuring out why it happened, what happened, and I told this to my social circle, and while it was happening, was that when this all falls out, I would not be surprised if the restrictions came on the Robinhood, the Schwab, the Stash, the apps that consumers are using to invest. I would not be surprised if the limitations were not on Wall Street or short or people selling shorts or anything like that. The limitations are then put on the consumer or the little trader, the little investor. That is how I think it's, and that's just my prediction. That's what's going to happen, is that more restrictions will be put on the individual.
I read this one good analysis. I forget where it was from, but they basically made a lot of sense to me, is that the restrictions could be by putting a per trade tax, which would discourage short trading. You and I couldn't absorb that on small trades, but people who trade thousands and thousands, they could easily eat that regulatory fee. But no, this is, to me, Ben, final thought. This particular story is a sequel to the story that we saw last year with the what people like myself call the censorship of social media, where you had the entirety of the social media world at one point. And whether you agree with what they did or not based on politics is one thing. But the idea that very few people in Silicon Valley control such a massive amount of power. And then when we hear about the second phase, when we hear about regulating that, like, again, I have a story later on we can talk about that deals with this very thing, is that who gets regulated? Is it the service? Is it the traditional service, or is it the user? And if you start putting restrictions on certain services, those services will pass that restriction down to you. If it's financial, your services will be raised. If it's restrictive in for litigious reasons like speech, then anything you say could be declared hate speech. So again, be careful what you ask for, because companies are in this to make money. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of customers that are expendable.
Right. And really, there's a lot of, you kind of mentioned that this was a very closed ecosystem, even 20 years ago, that a lot of the rules have been set up. Like there's been a lot of regulation put in place and deregulation that's happened over the past 30, 40, 50 years that, are meant to be exclusionary. So the whole thing with Robinhood and trading and all this kind of thing, I would not be surprised if it, really hasn't gone away. But yeah, I definitely wanted your input on that because that happened last week, and I think we're going to hear more about it in the coming weeks. Because last thing, actually two more things. The last thing is that there should be a testimony in front of Congress, I believe next week or the week after. They have a particular Reddit user going there to talk about all this as well. So all the jargon and that kind of thing. The one thing I will say, when this was happening, Nathan, I saw a lot of media outlets not really understanding the Reddit culture and that kind of thing. I'll admit, I joined Wall Street Bets. Let's see, what was the last thing they did? They did something really stupid, and they earned a lot of money, but they got my attention about a year and a half ago. So I've been, kind of casually browsing. I don't post or anything like that, but I've been casually browsing Wall Street Bets for a while. Yes, absolutely, I'm a lurker. So I've lurked for a while now. The thing that social media did, and you touched on a little bit, and some people try to co-opt the movement, or at least what happened. They were like, this is the little guy grouping up to take on the man. This is this is millennials taking out their frustration on a system that's rigged against them. This is us taking on these hedge fund and all this kind of thing. Like there was a lot of very high ideals. Wall Street Bets, and coming from someone who's again at least observed the ecosystem for long enough, there's a reason that word bets is on the end. Wall Street Bets is a place that you go to gamble your tuition, your mortgage, your second mortgage, your home loan, whatever, and you bet your money in irresponsible ways. And don't get me wrong, I have seen posts about people committing suicide because they've lost. I've seen people, warning that, hey, you need to be very careful in what you bet, but it is bets. It's not a movement. It's not a social move. It is strictly a place to essentially, like you said with the casino analogy earlier, it's a way to play the casino, but with stock shorts, puts, calls, that kind of thing. And everyone else who took to social media and, I think it was a better narrative to say that, little investors are teaming up against big, scary banks and big, scary hedge funds. But no, it was someone calling a good bet and people piled on. So, that's my last thing, was that it was not a cultural movement. It was... No,
that was a very good explanation. And I want to add to that. It's a failure of journalism. We've talked about this before.
It was. It really was.
Is that we've talked about this before, and I don't want to rehash it, but long story short, TLDR for anybody who's just joining in. My theory, and I've said this before, and it's just paying out better than a Robinhood trade, is that the vast majority of modern journalists are activists at heart. They have activism feelings, like the same way a theater student really believes in their craft. Is that they see this. They don't understand stocks. They're not doing any research. They see this, and again, they reframe this entire event as some sort of economic redistribution, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like because they think Robinhood. They see Robinhood. They think, rob from the rich, pay to the poor. But what they don't understand is that Robinhood's the bad guy, because when you rob from the rich, they're going to enact vengeance on the poor. It's like people who think Romeo and Juliet is a romance. Right? They don't understand what they're talking about. And no, I would never classify this. I would never classify it as this some sort of social movement. I think it was exactly what it was, Ben. It was shenanigans.
Yeah.
Not illegal, but shenanigans still. And anybody who's going to dump their money in this thing is a fool. That's why I didn't invest. I know people who did. I didn't invest. I don't invest anything, because every time everybody's doing something, there's going to be blowback. And I'll just say this, final thought.
Yeah.
I called this a sequel of the social media purge. How did Robinhood get taken down? How did their Reddit group get down? Not because of Wall Street. That's right. Hate speech. Speech. It's going to be the catch-all for anything they don't like. So be careful what you ask for, because I like the color blue. Oh, that offends me. I'm a red person. Hate speech. I'm not joking either.
It's
I wish I was.
I think we
Just
can
careful.
segue and very quick, and I wanted to kind of keep this in about 10 minutes because I want to talk about some video games and stuff like that to kind of cap off Friday. But I did want to talk about Section 230, which I believe is what you've been alluding to this whole time. And by the way, Section 230 has came under fire with the previous administration because it was seen as kind of the protection that social media giants and social media companies
Nobody liked it. Nobody liked Section 230.
Yeah, well, and just to give everyone a quick overview, Section 230, it was enacted in 1996, and essentially it gave companies, or at least back in 1996, it gave message boards the protection to still operate and not be responsible for every weird, gross, disturbing thing that was posted to their platforms. It was a way to kind of protect free speech in a way, because then it wasn't the responsibility of the message boards to take control of all their users. Because again, you can think of it like a newspaper that's highly curated. Everything is, published by the newspaper versus standing in the middle of a city square, and anyone can say anything that they want, and there you go. There was a middle ground to be had on the internet where, it was curated and moderated to some extent, but at the same time it was completely, kind of open for anyone to at least initially say what they wanted to. So that was 230, and times have evolved. 1996 was a long time ago, and now we have multi-billion, almost trillion-dollar companies who are still under this protection, and it might be time for a revamp. Nathan, take it from there.
I'll tread carefully because this is a longer topic than we have time on 2 shows for. Long story short, you either love 230 or you hate it, depending on what your politics are. It's literally Rashomon. You could like every single person that doesn't like 230 now is exactly the same as it was the last 4 years. That's the one thing that everybody agreed on. Trump didn't like it. The Democrats didn't like it. Nobody liked 230. Everybody talked about it, but every attempt to sort of stalwart it was thwarted. And for all the reasons we just said, is that you have a very limited concentration of power within a very handful of companies. I don't want to link to the story or have your listeners go there, but Time Magazine just released a comprehensive look at how the tech companies collided with several other entities to sort of guide and suggest and move the election in a certain direction.
Mm-hmm.
And they framed it as a positive thing because, democracy needs safeguards, which it does. But the problem, though, is that when you have, again, it's anybody who knows geometry and levers understands what I'm going to say. When you have a very long reach and a very small fulcrum, you can direct things with a lot more force.
Yeah.
So if you have Twitter and Facebook deciding 99% of the social media, you had for me, one of the most scary things was hearing that Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey was vacationing at the Bahamas when he shut Trump off. That's how easy it is to remove 80 million users to just press a button. You can sit there and collect you think you have power. You think you have 80 million followers, whatever, but you don't have access to what those 80 million people say. You have no say what they can do. The company does. And the company could shut you down because, again, going back to 230, the protection was, well, we're not publishers. We're not responsible for what our users did.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't believe this because hence all of these restrictive things. We're going to ban you for hate speech. We're going to ban you because you said this, you shared this. But again, it became who directs the banning, who directs the expulsion from the service. And it has been very politicized. And what's very interesting is that one of the last things that Trump did before he left office was trying to rescind 230. It was literally a spaghetti at the wall thing. It was haphazard, sloppy, it's terrible. Now, as everyone with a brain expected, the Democrat Party, which is now in control, is looking to revise 230, as we all predicted they would, because now they can decide what these 230 regulations could be. And again, everything I said about Robinhood applies here. It sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds good. Well, let's hold them responsible. But how do we hold them responsible? What do you do? And I'll be honest with you, Ben, I don't trust anyone in Congress, anyone in Washington decide this, because this literally is the decision for what constitutes free speech. Before they said it's a private business, they can do whatever. And I say poppycock to that. I never believe that argument. This is not like crying fire in a crowded theater. You mentioned going out in the streets and shouting, right?
Yeah.
They call that, what do they call that? The tower in the sphere influence. I forget who wrote about it, but basically the idea is someone lives in the tower, you can shout but you could be in the town square, you could shout. It's about network effect. It's about networking and about how do you get your message across. And so nothing's stopping me from writing a manifesto. But if I put the manifesto on Twitter, then should Twitter be held responsible if someone reads my manifesto? Possibly, if it's crazy. But what if I just think that cats rule the world? No one's going to ban me from Twitter for cats rule the world. I'll probably become emperor. But if I say cats rule the world, therefore we need to eliminate human beings, then I'm crossing into crazy town. And so maybe they should ban me. But again, I don't know who makes these regulations. I don't understand. But I just saw in my lifetime, and possibly in your lifetime, the single biggest usurpation of power and free speech I've ever seen. And people say, well, they justified it. Hate speech, hate speech. Well, congratulations. People are trading stocks. That's hate speech. Hey, I want to sell balloons. That's hate speech. I want to sell a pillow. That's hate speech. What is hate speech? No one can tell me what hate speech is, but I'll know it when I see it. And so I'm optimistic. I'm glad they're talking about it because I do think there should be some revising of what these people do. If Twitter wants to ban me because I'm being violent, then they're no longer just social media. They're trying to be a publication. They're exercising editorial discretion. And anybody who exercises editorial discretion is doing so at the behest of a set of stated goals. Like all journalists, they should have to follow their own policy. But Ben, they can't treat you different than me and call that fair. If you and I are doing the same thing, but the only difference is that you believe in net neutrality and I don't, they shouldn't ban me because of my opinion. If I didn't hurt anybody, if I didn't say anything, and vice versa, I wouldn't want you banned either, because I want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
But the problem is if only a handful of people get to decide this, and those people are horribly, horribly biased, then no, I don't think they should have any protections at all.
There and to bring another analogy to this, I'm sure that and of course we all know about Twitch by now, and one of the issues that Twitch had for a while there was that they had a general community guideline, things that you could do and things you couldn't do, and Twitch very kind of unilaterally decided, just like you said with hate speech, we'll know it when we see it. They were very flexible in how they used the ability to ban people from their platform, and they had the guidelines there. They were up. They were kind of vague, and they could apply them however they felt like it. But then they tried to do this thing about a year ago, and it's been working not so great. But anyways, they try to very clearly state, for instance, just how much cleavage is too much cleavage, what is inappropriate, what is not inappropriate, and they try to give real world examples, and they try to state exactly what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And they haven't applied that perfectly across the board, but I think a lot of users and a lot of people who stream on the platform decided that, this was at least better if we have a clear cut, these are the rules, these are the expectations, and everyone is held to that standard. That might be better than just, what is subjectively inappropriate or not inappropriate.
Yeah, but they can't you get 5 people in the room, you're going to get 20 different opinions what subjective is. Like, the problem is like, here's the example that I use best. If you buy a Toyota Prius, and you decide you want to deliver pizzas with it, you're perfectly fine. But if you buy a Toyota Prius and you decide you're going to mow down civilians on the bridge, that's not okay. But should the survivor families be able to sue Toyota because you misused their car? And you say to yourself, well, that sounds ridiculous. But you apply that, then you do.
It's happened with guns, yeah.
Yeah, with guns. But then let's go further, though. What about guns? What about knives at Walmart? You can go to the Walmart right now and buy a set of knives for $10. What's to stop you from stabbing anybody? Hopefully you're not going to, because you're not crazy. But what I'm saying, you could apply this to anything. And let's apply this to social media. If someone says, I am going to kill you on social media, get his ass off. If someone tries to plan a terrorist coup, get them off. Like, these are clear cut. Like, there's no discussion, because you couldn't do that in the real world. So, but it's one thing to say, I said this. It's another thing to say, well, I think this. And that's a problem. That's a problem, because thinking could be anything. It could be, I hate to say it, I could be misgendering somebody. I could be saying the wrong word out of context. I could be posting a picture that is cultural appropriation. There's absolutely no consensus. And these people are never satisfied. They are never satisfied. There's always more to take. always more. And I'll tell you why. Because these people that have positioned themselves as the guardians of culture, what do they think is going to happen? They're going to say, oh, you know what? We've done it. We've perfected everything. We can go home now and take a break. No, it's their business. It's their business to keep munching. It's like Pac-Man. There's always more dots. And so that's the problem. And I don't want these phonies deciding what other people can say on Twitter. I'll say whatever I want. You want to ban me? Go ahead. So, but what I'm saying is, I like hearing your melodious voice. I don't want you banned because you happen to think that Linux isn't as good as Windows. And you think I'm joking? It could happen.
There's a lot of things that could happen, and I think when it comes to legislation like this, that you do have to, or at least they're going to attempt to legislate for a very wide group of people. Because let's face it, if you try to legislate Facebook, you are legislating 3 billion people. 3 billion monthly users, and what they say, how they operate, that kind of thing. At the same time, though, there have been pieces of content that have spread virally through these platforms. The first one that comes to my head is the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand, and there should be a way that these platforms are able to be held accountable for not doing enough to stop the spread of that kind of content. There has to be middle ground. There has to be somewhere, and really, that was
Can I ask you a question?
What's that? What's that?
I just wanted to, because I have a perfect example for you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Christchurch shooting, which was terrible. A lot of people died. Okay, but it was live streamed. And this wasn't the first case of someone committing murder on live stream. There's been hundreds of it.
Right.
Is Facebook still up? Is it still a business?
Of course.
Okay. Is Parler still up? Is it still a business?
At the moment, no, it is not.
Okay. Why? And the question is, which group is bigger? And that is a perfect example. And I don't like Parler and I don't like Facebook. But how come?
Because Parler is a much smaller group of people that had a very clearly defined user base.
So the problem is, though, is that you have documented cases, hundreds of cases, maybe thousands. You hear stories all the time about the nasty crap that people see on the moderators. Like they have to go through counseling sometimes. But Facebook's still up. It's still being used. There was somebody live streaming a murder just the other day. It hasn't stopped. You can't stop a live streaming murder. But Parler, they tried to connect it with a coup on January 6th, and they used that as the impetus to destroy it. It just so happens they were 100% conservatives. But we don't like conservatives. Let's get rid of them. They're no good. But you know what? Facebook's still up. Twitter's still up. And that's what I'm talking about, is that the people in charge are politicizing what speech is. You may not like it, but you want to do it fairly. Don't do this half-ass stuff because it's not right.
Which is why I said, just like what Twitch attempted to do, and again, I don't think they have it perfectly, but as long as there are clearly defined guidelines that either you violate for some reason, at least people know why you're violating. And of course, if those guidelines are skewed very obviously one way, then you can have that conversation. Are you implementing the rules with a clear bias and a clear skew? And then you can talk about that. But right now, it's very hands off and it's very 230, can't really do anything, and we're not really responsible. There has to be a middle ground. There's a difference between free speech and censorship, and there's a difference between censorship and moderation. Moderation should happen and does happen in healthy ecosystems. Censorship has no place like that. There's a very clear
censorship has a place on again, we all have our limits, right? Like, if I don't want child pornography on Twitter, but I'll say this: did you know that Twitter has no mechanism for reporting child pornography? Can't do it. I've tried.
You can report like objectionable content, but no, not specifically for that. Like YouTube and Facebook has.
I can report if somebody misgenders me, but I cannot report if I'm seeing hardcore child pornography. Why is that not a thing? So what's their priority when we've already seen FBI reports that Twitter is being used as a massive child porn
Twitter, and let's face it, anywhere where people congregate is going to be a venue for objectionable content, because that's where the people are. It's just how it is.
But this is a known issue for years. Like, they've had years to deal with this, and they still haven't done anything. Nothing.
that's where the legislation comes up, saying that you are not doing enough to tackle certain things, but then doing too much to tackle issues that maybe not everyone perceives to be a true issue, like, conservative viewpoints and that kind of thing. That's a conversation that needs to be had, and that's where I'm hoping any kind of conversation with 230 kind of comes into play, is that, hey, there have been objectionable uses of the guidelines, quote unquote, to take down certain viewpoints. But anyways, I digress. That went over by like 5 minutes. It's okay, Nathan. I love to hear
you have a timer on your screen. You need a timer.
On the video portion so you can see it. But but I did want to kind of wrap it up because that was kind of heavy with that and the Robinhood thing.
Yeah, that's a bigger topic. That's a huge topic.
It is. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things here, and I want quick reactions, Nathan, because we have like 15 minutes left. So
let's do this.
The first one, it's a piece of hardware. You might have seen it, you might not have. Xiaomi. Phones, not really popular here in the US because they really can't make it to the US market, but Xiaomi phone, latest concepts. This is a concept phone.
That, yeah.
And think about the, I think it was like the Samsung Edge that had like the edge that kind of wrapped around a little bit. The next Xiaomi phone is looking like it's going to have 4 waterfall edges, so 4 edges on each side of the phone, and no charging port, because you may think, where are you going to plug the cord in? No charging port. It's going to be completely wireless charging, and a screen that wraps almost all the way around. It will not have a back screen, but at least 4 waterfall edges. Nathan, how much further can we push the phone until it's just a...
Okay,
yeah.
Here's the thing. Don't use this phone in a bathroom. It will fall. So I don't like phones right now with the waterfall edges on 2 screens. The idea of no ports, let me just say this. Go buy a Tesla and use it in Siberia. Like, let's make a phone that's incompatible with 99% of the infrastructure, like for charging and peripherals and everything like that. Let's just do this. Unfortunately, I think it's kind of the future. I think like Apple's been trying to force this on us for years, but they've been doing it like the frog in the pot.
Yeah,
they've been
slowly turning up the
features.
heat. Yep.
Yeah, and people have resisted every step of the way. And let's just be honest here. Apple, for some reason, Apple thinks they can move the industry forward, but we've resisted. But no, I mean, who knows what phones are going to look like? I mean, what else can you do, Ben? It's a slab. It's a rectangular slab.
The traditional Apple phone is, of course, the traditional Apple innovation is to take something away, is to pull something off. And I guess, and I called this a while ago, was, the last thing that you can do is take away the power, kind of the power cable. And that's what wireless charging does. It takes away that final cable. So
who was the company? It was another Chinese company. It wasn't Xiaomi. It was the company where they showed a guy walking across the room and the phone was charging as he was walking across the room because of sensors built in the house.
I did not see that.
I mean, wireless charging is coming, right? But I mean, this
but
is
not
the
to
dream
that
of
extent.
Tesla, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, but remember,
Tesla promised that you could put something like in your garage or on your garage floor, and you just pull up, and it would charge your car.
No. I'm
while it's
talking
parked.
Nikolai Tesla.
Oh,
He was experimenting with wireless power,
long range wireless power as well, being able to like light bulbs
By the way,
multiple miles away. Yeah.
But when you hear him talk about it now, it sounds like a weapon, doesn't it?
Yes, we can electrify anything anywhere. Yeah, no, it really does. So anyways,
I like this concept stuff. I like this. I like the concept, but I would never use this.
You said the same thing about foldable phones, and those are still coming out. So who knows?
Yeah, a lot of stuff comes out.
Okay, so there's that one. These next two these next two, and then we'll go to Disney. But these next two are video games. A little report, because I think we touched on this a little bit. Prince of Persia, Sands of Time Remake, delayed indefinitely. Good. Yeah. Really?
I don't want remakes. I want a new game.
It was a huge success for the PlayStation 2.
Like 15, 20 years ago. I mean, it was a good remake. I mean, it was a fun game. It reformatted the franchise, like the old 2D franchise from the old days, which, by the way, the original game is still the best. It's basic, I love the side-scrolling one. But no, this series eventually is what inspired Assassin's Creed. And so it was a fun game. It was great. By the way, the best version of this game was on the GameCube. If you ever get the GameCube version,
GameCube was really good. Really good console.
GameCube was good.
So,
but Goodbye,
Yep.
Prince of Persia.
Prince Persia, delayed indefinitely, so no hope for that. Speaking of which, something that was also delayed indefinitely, but then snuck its way out. You may have heard about this one, Nathan. GoldenEye 007.
Yeah. Look at
there,
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, there was my original James Bond, because I'm a little bit younger. But yeah, they had a leak of the updated, quote unquote, the updated GoldenEye 007 that was supposed to be for the Xbox 360, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
This story was famous forever. Like this was like E.T. in the
the
E.T.
trash game. Heap. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, long story short, for those who don't know, the original GoldenEye 64 was created by Rare, who was a second-party Nintendo developer for a very long time, and they helped create before Nintendo. They created Battletoads. They created with Nintendo. They created Donkey Kong Country. They created GoldenEye 64. They created Conkers. That sort of thing. They were a massive developer in the 90s, and of course. But here's the thing, though: the company was coming apart at the seams. Eventually, Nintendo just sold it off to Microsoft. However, the rights never were fully, on paper. And so and you could say that about the movies, Ben. Like, who owns the James Bond movies? Like, who knows anymore? It's owned by 50 different companies. So you have the Hollywood companies. You have Nintendo owning part of it because Nintendo financed this game. You have Microsoft, who owns Rare. You have none of the original
the article mentions that, where it says Microsoft, Nintendo, Eon, who of course made the game, and then of course there was Activision, who had all the rights to make the James Bond games when this was supposed to come out, and on top of that, all of the, like you said, the movie companies that had the rights to James Bond and the character.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
Eventually, they couldn't get the rights, so they made a new game. They made a
new
GoldenEye
in 2010
on the Wii. And I'll be honest with you, I liked that game a lot. On the Wii, it was great.
With Daniel Craig,
really
right?
No, kind of. It's one of those things where the Daniel Craig was in it, but he was a shadow. Because you see a lot of, like, if you look at I forget there was a James Bond game that came out in 2000 something where they literally didn't have an actor, so they just put they do this all the time. They show the body, but they don't show the face. It's blacked out.
Like the Master Chief syndrome. Yeah, right.
Pretty much. And so, but no, the GoldenEye remake on the Wii, and I think it was ported to everything else, was really good. But I realize a lot of people, cut their teeth on the GoldenEye 64, and it's a masterpiece for what it was. It helped save the James Bond franchise. Let's be honest here. The movies were on life support. The game made more money than the movie, but again, the movies then picked up and became this juggernaut like never before. Even more successful during the Daniel Craig thing. And if we ever get the new one, if it ever comes out. But it's funny to see no James Bond games anymore.
Yeah.
But this is the granddaddy of them all. Like, this is the progenitor. Like, GoldenEye 64 was the progenitor of Call of Duty. It was a progenitor of all that stuff.
GoldenEye definitely revolutionized first-person shooters, and it was, it was really cool. So a leaked version has been found online, and
you can play it. I think you can download and play it.
Yeah, not going to encourage anyone to steal anything, but yeah, I'm sure that it's pretty easy to find. And by the way, they even got some comments from the original creator of the game, and that was David Doak, who, of course, voiced the original Dr. Doak. And it was very cool to see him kind of revisit this game 25 years later. So anyways, there's that reaction. Next reaction, Nathan.
Yeah.
Disney Plus.
Did I send you the story?
Yes, you did. Raya and the Last Dragon is... So it's not even that we have theater movies coming into our homes for $25 a pop, but now you can actually pre-order a movie before it even releases.
Okay, you just said a second ago you're not encouraging anybody to do anything illegal. Well, I'm under no such restrictions. Full disclosure, we get along great with Disney. They send us screeners. We do all this stuff. The nature of what we do at Popzara and everywhere else is changing because of VOD, because of the way screeners go. This movie has been shuffled around. Disney recognizes they're going to lose a lot of money theatrically. And I'll just say this. I have no comment on this movie. They're trying to do what they did with Mulan, where they're trying to get you to pay in addition to the service they already promised you was a la carte. Right. So they're kind of violating the contract already, but it's Disney, so they can get away with it. Here's the thing. What is it? $30 for this Raya movie? A new franchise, a new IP?
Yeah, 30. Yep.
Yep. $30 to pay on top of the service you were already sold as unlimited. So here's the thing. They didn't do this with Soul. Soul was the new Pixar movie that came out on Christmas last year. By the way, one of my favorite movies of 2020. Soul did great. Like Soul broke Disney Plus records. It was more watched than even Mandalorian. Great movie. You're getting a AAA Pixar movie for Disney Plus. That's outstanding. But then you could see Disney's not sold on the idea because this movie is going to be $30. I'll be honest with you. This doesn't look like 1/10 the movie Soul is. But again, for some reason they're doing it. And I noticed this movie has Asian subtext, the same way Mulan did. So I'm wondering if that has something
the Chinese
to do.
The Chinese audience, always.
I'm wondering if that has something to do with it, right? And so, but here's the thing, though. I've said this to you how many times, how many years, that Disney Plus's entire infrastructure depends on the theatrical releases, and Netflix doesn't. And so you saw there was an animated movie that came on Netflix last year that was very similar in style. It was also Asian centric. That did fantastic for Netflix. Oh goodness, I forget what Over the Moon, I think it was called. But really, you want to look at HBO and HBO Max, because HBO made a lot of people upset when they said all these theatrical movies would be released directly on VOD for a limited time and not charge extra. So for everyone listening, watch what Disney Plus does in this year and watch what HBO does.
Yeah.
It will be very interesting. And I'll tell you right now, HBO is going to win, because 15 seconds after this movie hits VOD on Disney Plus, 15 seconds, and that's an exaggeration, this movie will be on torrents. So I'm not suggesting you go to see torrents. I'm not suggesting that you bootleg a movie that you should have for free because Disney lied to you. But I'm just saying 15 seconds after this movie premieres on Disney Plus, it will be on torrents. So it's not a problem that HBO is going to have, because you get every movie included with the price.
Well, yeah, and that's something that whenever we cover pirating in general here on the show, study after study shows that if people aren't opposed to paying for content that they feel is worth it. That's why Netflix and the Netflix model has done so well, is that they pay what was back in the day $8-9, maybe $12-13 nowadays, and they get all this content. Whenever something is available on Netflix or for streaming, the rate of piracy actually goes down because people have an easy, convenient way to see it.
Yes.
As soon as you throw up geolocation, kind of geofencing, as soon as you throw up a price wall, anything that prevents people from easily accessing that content for a reasonable price, that's when piracy comes up. And I think a $30 paywall is, to your point, Nathan, one of those walls that won't encourage piracy.
Well, here's the thing, though. I'm not suggesting anybody pirate this film, but I am saying that Disney lied to you. They made you a deal. You signed a contract when you subscribed to Disney Plus, and they're reneging on that contract for reasons I don't understand.
I think it will show up for free eventually on Disney Plus.
Oh, eventually.
But 6-8 months later.
No.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though, Ben. You're paying for a movie you don't own.
True.
You're paying $30.
You're paying to rent it for 2 days.
You're paying to rent this movie but they're coupling it with a service you need to pay to have. It's kind of like Google Stadia. Like you have to pay for the service, then you have to pay on top of that. And once you stop subscribing, you lose everything. It's not like Spotify. Spotify, I can listen to everything as much as I want, and when I stop paying, hey, the music's gone. But that's the deal.
Yep.
Like you know what I mean? Like there's no.
You're paying for
ownership
access,
there.
not for ownership. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I just paid Vudu $30 to see this movie, I wouldn't complain. But if I have to pay for a subscription service, then at least be upfront about it. But they're not upfront about it.
So of course your complaint is that you're paying for access already and you don't get access. You have to pay even more for more access.
Can I be honest with you, Ben?
Yeah.
I'm so unenthused for this movie, which looks so generic. I mean, the movie could turn out to be a masterpiece, but I would rather talk about like Godzilla versus King Kong, which legitimately people seem excited for it. By the way, when it premieres in March next month on HBO, won't cost $30.
No, it'll be free. You just have to wait like a week or something like that.
Free if you pay. So.
Yeah, free if you pay for HBO. And of course that whole thing. But actually, speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to hear more Nathan talking just like that and with some of the coolest people that I've ever met, there's of course the podcast that you've put out, and you have two, as I understand it, the State of Gaming, the best and worst games of 2020, and the latest best and worst of movies. Here we go. The best and the worst and everything else of movies. So real quick, we have like 2 minutes left, Nathan. Talk about making these two.
Okay, cool. Now you've been on one of these before. You were, for those who don't know, Ben
The
actually
recent
appeared
CES?
on our CES wrap up because there's no year-end best of tech at Popzara, but we do have the best movies. We do have the best games. We're like that, and I believe on the games when we had a guest, Antal Bokar from I think it was if you scroll down a little bit, you could see where he's from. Occasionally we splice in talent like yourself.
Third Coast Review.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was a very good guest, and we had a lot of fun. It was myself and Corey. We talked about the best games, and we didn't do the top 10 list because there was just too many things. It was a weird year. But I'll say this: 2020 was the year that video games ruled. Like whether you like them or not, they were the medium for the year. They met the challenge.
Yep.
And they helped get people through the pandemic in a way that not a lot did because by their nature they're very social. And moving over to the movie section, that was a lot of fun too. I had a lot more opinions on this, but no, it was myself, my two editors, Christian Sterling and Ethan Brown. They both live in California. And so, no, we had a lot of fun with this too.
Movies must have been one of those things that's, there's music playing in the background. Sorry about that.
Soft music.
But
Soft
yeah,
music.
There we go. But yeah, and of course, the movies must have been weird because it's like all the studios said, okay, we're gonna wait this pandemic out 6 months, and they pushed everything back. And then I'm sure that there was a gluttony of 2020. So everyone,
it was very difficult. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So everyone, if you want to hear more about that, popzara.com. We'll have a link in the show notes over at Computer America. Nathan, we will get that fixed for everyone. Thank you for pointing that out. And everyone, hey, thank you for tuning in for the show. One last time, we have a contest going. Enter for some free money, some free prizes. Thank you for 30 years. And hey, we're looking forward to a lot more here with you. Nathan, we'll catch you really at the end of this month, and it should be pretty quick, but we'll catch you then. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.